neutrons and other things will, alpha particles and irradiated particles, okay? Just like uranium, you know, all the stuff you've seen in the science movies with the glowing things. It's giving off things. It's losing information, it's losing particles so that if it keeps going long enough, it'll become lead. So it just keeps going down and down and down until it becomes something that doesn't radiate anymore. Scientists know how long it takes for half of it to disappear. Now, they call it half-life. What's half-life? It's very simple. You have a glass this full of water, okay? Let's say after 10 minutes, you have this much, which is half. Well, after 10 minutes, you have half of that half. And after 10 more minutes, you have half of that. That's half-life. Carbon has a half-life of about 5,720 years, I guess, something along in there. So that means if you find a certain amount of carbon-14 and compare it to the number of carbon-12, which is one of the decay levels, you'll know that half of whatever was in there took 5,700 years. That's how you can date something that's living. That's carbon-14. Now, interestingly enough, we're going to talk about this later, they found carbon-14 in diamonds. How old are diamonds, according to them? I'll say them, it could be you, I don't know. You may be a scientist, I don't know. According to the scientists, you have any idea? Thousands of years, diamonds? Hundreds of thousands of years? How about millions? Millions of years. Millions upon millions, maybe even billions of years to form diamonds. That's what they say. They can make them in a lab in an hour and a half, but that's beside the point. It took billions of years. Let's just give them millions. If that's true, based on the 5,700-year half-life of carbon-14, there ought not to be one drop of carbon-14. As a matter of fact, after about a few, maybe 100,000 years or less, there would be zero carbon-14 in the entire universe. I mean, in the entire Earth, nothing. It would all be gone. So, you can come up with that. Hey, fella, diamonds, they got carbon-14. Where'd they get it? How could you have it be around for billions of years? It ought to radiate off all that carbon-14. All you find is carbon-12, just plain old carbon. That's all you're going to find. So how come? Well, let's move on. Hold that thought. That's a good argument, right? Boy, you got them there. Yeah, I got you. What about comets? Anybody remember seeing Halley's Comet? I finally saw it, what was it, several years ago? I forget what year. I saw it. Yeah, it's really cool. Well, what are comets? Comets are a ball of dirt and ice. That's it. Because they have ice on them, if they come towards the sun, as you know, comets are in an elliptical path. Here's the sun. A comet comes around like this and flips on back out into space. If it's Halley's Comet, is it 76 years? I don't remember now. It's so many years cycle, okay? Well, here's the funny thing about that. As it gets closer to the sun, what does sun and water do? They don't mix. Well, so the sun radiates off the water, and you see the vapor trail of the water evaporating or leaving the rock of dust or dirt, and that's what you see as the tail. Whoop-de-doo, right? Well, after a while, guess what happens? No comet, no more. Like the grave site that I read, here lies Lester Moore, shot in the head with a .44, no less, no more. And that's what happens. A comet disappears. It's gone. So comets don't last forever. As a matter of fact, any comet that we know about can't last more than about 10,000 years. Or a few, nothing like millions, nothing like billions. Boy, I got you that one. We got you with diamonds, and I got you with comets. Yeah, oh boy, I'm tearing you up, Mr. Evolutionist. You see there? Boy, you can't come. That's it. Sorry, buddy. Well, let's look at DNA. Now, DNA is a language. And I'll give more on this later, but DNA is the code for our bodies. Now, if you took, the old joke is if you took 1 billion monkeys and 1 billion typewriters and let them all click away, some of you young people, a typewriter is kind of like a computer. But type away. After a while, you see some guy going down the list and nothing, mix a big, this, 7 years, the chances of them writing anything is impossible. Well, the DNA code is just a tad more complicated. As a matter of fact, it takes, back in the day of Jurassic Park when they talk about how they have billions and billions of codes. They were right. It would take you can't, there's not enough time in anybody's lifetime to count them all, even if you could count them as fast as you could count. They're too complicated. All of that is a code with 4 little letters, and that code tells you everything about everybody. And again, I'll get into this later, but for instance, if I have arms and legs, well, that's because my DNA has that. Well, a monkey's going to have DNA for arms and legs because they have arms and legs. It's not because we're the same. But you have a problem with information science. It's been proven scientifically that information has to come from a source. Now, I can copy a piece of paper, and that's a copy, but the copy machine or the printer that just ran out of ink in my office, because I forgot to order it, it can copy it, but that's not making information. It came from somewhere. Either I wrote a letter and had to type it up, or somebody did, or God wrote the Bible. Information comes from somewhere. It comes from God. You can't have information in an evolutionary world, period. You can't have it. It has to start somewhere. Molecules don't come together, slime doesn't come together and form DNA. It can't happen, okay? So you have that information science that is just absolutely impossible. Can't have it. Boy, I got 3 barrels in my shotgun. I just hit you with carbon-14. I just hit you with comets. I just hit you with DNA. You've got to bow down. I'm one, right? And they say, oh, okay, C14. Well, it's possible there's some unknown process that we don't know about. There was probably some contamination. Of course, that's a dumb question because diamonds are the hardest things known to man. How do you contaminate a diamond? You don't. You cut it, but you don't. And you cut it with another diamond, and that's it. But maybe there's an unknown process. If you give us enough time, we'll figure it out. Uh-oh. That didn't work too well. I shot that bullet, but it missed. Oh, man. What's going to happen next? Well, comets. Well, you see, Mr. Creationist, yeah, it's true that comets don't last more than a few thousand years because they just disintegrate. But there's a comet generator way out where we can't detect it. It's called the Oort cloud, O-O-R-T, after a guy named Oort, of course. He came up with this idea. Well, can you prove it isn't there? Well, I can't prove that something that I can't detect is not there. Uh-oh, there goes that second bullet. Ew, they got me. Oh, we just got to come up with an Oort cloud. Well, it doesn't exist. Yeah, but it might. Some scientist says it does, just because it has to. Otherwise, that's where comets are made. They're a big bunch of baby comets, and every now and then one will fling off and end up going through the solar system. Well, what about DNA? There's lots of unknown things that we don't know about. I don't know everything. Nobody does, except God. So, you know what? You're right about DNA being a language, and it has to come from a source, but there's some unknown source or process that just something to do. It may not be available now, but we'll figure it out. Give us time. If you knew how many times they've changed the Big Bang, it's really kind of amazing how many times. First, it was just a Big Bang, and it just exploded. First there was nothing, then it exploded, and then it was nice and even. Well, wait a minute, we got background ready. Okay, so now we'll make it exploded, then it got real fast, and then it slowed down for no reason. It's changing all the time, and I heard just recently they changed the date from 14-some billion to 13-something billion years old or something. Just change it anytime you want, I guess. But what have they done here? They say, well, there's some unknown process that you can't find. We don't know. We're stuck. I just shot 3 really good bullets that are just indisputable. They're science. They're proven. And he deflected every one of them. Because every scientific fact we come up with, they will always have a rescuing device. This is why I was never successful in convincing anybody when I started shouting out about the flood, and I started talking about comets, and I talked about... They just deflected them all off with a rescuing device. We do it too. Why? Well, how about somebody comes up to you and says, I hope they don't, and I hope you know how to answer it, but where did, well, let me pick something else, something a little more. Well, let's say they come up with Joshua's long day, and they tell you, hey, how could that happen? The earth would have to stop, and everything would fly off, and they give you all these reasons, and you haven't studied it, and you go, well, I'm not sure, but give me some time, I'll figure it out. Well, that's a rescuing device, too. We don't know everything. There's questions you can ask that maybe you don't know the answer. So a rescuing device is based on, it must be then concluded that one must start with a correct worldview in order to account for the facts of creation. And that's where we're going to go next week. We're going to show you, as a matter of fact, next week and the week after, I'm going to show you a whole bunch of scientific bullets that are just prove that the earth is young. And just confirm it in every scientific way possible. But I wanted you to see this first, because for everything I'm going to say next 2 weeks, somebody has a rescuing device for it. So you have to understand when you're dealing with evolutionists, lost people, theistic evolutionists, those pastors that are, I told you this is destroying the church. I mean, how is it destroying the church? Well, I mentioned this last time. If you think there's a possibility that science knows a little bit more, and maybe science says, I know that all of you in here have said, I wonder about that billions of years. I mean, the scientists all say that. And, that I don't care what they say. There's a lot of good scientists that don't say that. You took at Isaac Newton and some of the great ones. Here's another question that maybe you could use to stumble them, which is a pretty good one. Name one scientific, validated, peer-proven, observable scientific fact that could not have been discovered if it was not for evolution. There are none. As a matter of fact, most of the facts that we know now were predicted by creationists. The magnetic moment of the planets, we're going to talk about that, how they have a magnetic field, how that heat generates off planets. Well, how can the planet generate heat if it's only been there a short time? It ought to have run out of heat, those things. The point is that we better start with the correct worldview. With the correct worldview, then we have some solid ground to stand on, and we can show, and I'm going to show you this at the end, the last session, how you can use that to undermine everything, every rescuing device they might have. And it's not what you think either. It's Dr. Lyle came up with this, I guess, or him and his mentors, and it's brilliant. So I hope I'm whetting your appetite for that. So, worldviews, keep that in mind when you're dealing with somebody. And again, the reason that the churches have lost kids, and we showed you the statistics last time, in high school, they're bombarded with the lie of evolutionism with no other. How old was I? I don't know, but I was at Temple, Tennessee Temple. I was a grown adult, been saved for several years, and grew up in the Minneapolis school system and then down in Florida. I never heard one word against evolution, not by anybody, not by any pastor, not by the guy that led me to the Lord on the ship, not by any seminar or Christian seminar that I went to. We went to one in Japan that was a real great thing for me as a new Christian. Never heard any of that until I got to Tennessee Temple. Now, one of the problems I had as a kid was, how do you put that together? I never could, and I never tried. But see, that's the back of most people's mind. Now, if you can undermine the Bible, what's the best way to get rid of Christianity? Is it to say that Christ didn't rise from the dead? No. There's a lot of proof for that. There's too much proof for that. More proof that Jesus lived than Caesar ever lived. I mean, written down actual documents. 5,000 extant manuscripts show that it's all true. We got the Dead Sea Scrolls that have shown most of the Bible, including most of the book of Isaiah, and Isaiah 53 is there, But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities, chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray, and we've turned everyone to his own way. But the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us now. See, if you start with the foundation of God in the Bible, and you show that man's word can't fit in the Bible, you've now given a good evidence for a young person who's dwelling with it, struggling with this. I don't care if the whole world is wrong, as long as I'm right according to God. God's right. Doesn't matter if you believe in him or not. You know about him in your heart of hearts. That's what you should always let people know. And again, when you're doing this stuff, you don't just hit them with all these facts. And I am going to give you a lot of facts next week. So, okay, that tells you what worldviews are. And that's what we got to do, is we got to get our worldview so that everything we see, we look at it. Now, when they come up on TV and said, well, they just discovered something. Oh, well, that proves that the Bible's not true. Not through the glasses I'm wearing. Now, maybe I don't know what it is yet and I have to do a little study, but it's not there. They're doing the same thing. Okay? All right, we'll stop it there for now. And if you have any questions up to this point, next week we'll be talking about just all kinds of neat evidence that just is fascinating that shows that the earth is young, not old. So, anybody? Okay, let me stop the camera. If you have a question, I'll do my best to answer.